Adepa's vision blurred, her heart raced, and she whispered, "Oh God," before collapsing, unconscious. As Abigail pretended to be drunk, she clung to Dickson. "Dickson, I'm afraid to sleep alone. Can you stay with me until I fall asleep?" she asked, her voice soft and pleading. Dickson hesitated but then agreed. "All right, I'll stay for a while." He helped her to the guest room, wished her good night, and tried to leave, but Abigail wouldn't let go. She hugged him tightly, her breath warm against his neck. "Please, just stay a little longer," she whispered, pulling him onto the bed. Before he could react, she kissed him passionately. Overwhelmed by the moment, Dickson couldn't resist. As they lay together, Abigail asked, "Do you love me, Dickson? Will you stay with me forever?" Caught in the heat of the moment, Dickson promised, "Yes, Abigail, I love you." The next morning, Dickson drove Abigail home. Adepa wasn't there, so the departure was smooth. Adepa had always sensed a change in her auntie and sister, but never imagined they would go so far as to date Dickson. She had tried to move on from him, but her auntie and Abigail had not. In Accra, Adepa lived with a constant fear of sharing bad news with her mother, whose fragile health weighed heavily on her conscience. She worried that any distressing news might worsen her mother's condition. Meanwhile, Dickson justified his actions, believing he was getting revenge for what he saw as Adepa's betrayal. He didn't care if she found out about his relationship with Abigail. Abigail and Auntie Ama were careful to hide their relationship with Dickson from Adepa. They knew that having Adepa around would be a problem, especially if Mr. Opoku, Abigail's father, found out about Dickson. He would never approve. To enjoy their relationship freely, they saw Adepa as a threat that needed to be removed. In the house, Abigail and her mother barely spoke to Adepa. Abigail would only nod when Adepa talked to her, and Auntie Ama was equally cold. When Adepa confronted them about their behavior, they would simply say, "You've done nothing wrong." "We need to find a way to get her out of the house," Auntie Ama whispered urgently. Abigail responded, "But how? She's too stubborn to leave on her own." Returning to the village was not an option for Adepa. She knew that if her mother saw her and learned about her sister's betrayal, it would break her heart and worsen her health. Adepa felt trapped, unable to leave or stay. Abigail always knew when Adepa would return from work. One evening, she visited Dickson and pleaded, "Dickson, please take me home tonight." Dickson agreed and drove her back home. They spent some time in the house, laughing and playing around. Abigail's mother had left intentionally to allow Abigail to execute their plan. When Adepa returned from work, she saw Dickson's car outside and felt a surge of hope. Maybe he's here to make up, she thought, rushing into the house. But as she entered the hall, her heart sank. There on the sofa were Dickson and Abigail, wrapped in a romantic embrace. It felt like a nightmare. Adepa's vision blurred, her heart raced, and she whispered, "Oh God," before collapsing, unconscious. The shock and betrayal from her own family were too much to bear. Dickson and Abigail rushed her to the hospital, but Dickson felt no remorse. "When I saw her with another man, I didn't faint," he muttered to himself. She should endure this pain too. Abigail, cold and indifferent, wished Adepa would never wake up. She called her mother to share the news. Adepa collapsed. "She's at the hospital now." "Good," her mother replied. "Maybe this will make her leave for good." They celebrated, thinking their plan had succeeded. Dickson left money with the doctor to ensure Adepa's treatment, and then left without a second thought. The next day, Adepa woke up from her coma. The doctor explained what had happened, and she cried bitterly, realizing the depth of her family's betrayal. 4 days later, she was discharged from the hospital. Back at home, the reality hit her hard. Her auntie and sister had orchestrated her heartbreak, turning her life into a living hell. The home she once saw as a place of refuge was now a place of pain and deceit. With tears in her eyes, Adepa understood that she needed to leave. She gathered her strength and decided that for her own sanity and well-being, she would start anew, away from those who had caused her so much pain. Her heart ached, but she knew she had to find her own path to healing and happiness. She felt stranded and hopeless, with nowhere to go. Returning to the village was not an option. Gathering her belongings, Adepa faced Auntie Ama. "Auntie, I am leaving this house," Adepa said, tears streaming down her face. "I want to thank you for the love you have shown me ever since I came here. God bless you and Abigail for your care. I wish you good health and prosperity." Her voice trembled with pain and sorrow. Auntie Ama pretended to care, insisting, "Adepa, you must not go anywhere. If you leave, do not return to this house." Adepa, her heart heavy, replied, "Don't worry, Auntie. I will not come back." She then went to Abigail's room, thanked her without any bitterness, and left without asking why they had betrayed her. As soon as Adepa walked out, Auntie Ama and Abigail celebrated, feeling triumphant. Their laughter and joy filled the house, marking a stark contrast to Adepa's sorrow. With no place to go, Adepa went to a woman who owned a provision store in Accra. This woman helped ladies who wanted to sell sachet water, bottled water, and drinks, but didn't have a fridge. Adepa started working for her, carrying drinks to sell on commission. Every evening she joined the street girls and slept on the street. In the morning, she would pay for a washroom bath and return to work. Meanwhile, Abigail and Dickson enjoyed their lives together. On Abigail's birthday, Dickson surprised her with a beautiful car. He also gifted a car to Auntie Ama. The celebration was unique and memorable. That day, Abigail introduced Dickson to her father, Mr. Opoku, who, unaware of Dickson's past with Adepa, approved of their relationship. In the evening, as they celebrated, Dickson asked, "Abigail, do you need anything else besides the car?" Abigail, her eyes sparkling with excitement, replied, "My only wish is to travel abroad and spend some days with you." As they embraced, the stark difference between their joyous celebration and Adepa's struggle was evident. While Abigail and Dickson planned a future together, Adepa faced the harsh reality of her new life, finding strength in her resilience and hope for a better tomorrow. "Don't worry, Abigail," Dickson assured her. "I'll be traveling to the USA soon, and you can join me on the trip." Life seemed perfect for Abigail and her mother since Adepa had left, but for Adepa, things were very different. One day, while selling water on the street of Accra, around Spanner Junction, someone in a trotro vehicle called her to buy water. As she crossed the road, she missed her step and was knocked down by a private car. The accident left her badly hurt with a bone fracture, and she was admitted to the hospital. The driver who hit her, Armstrong, couldn't leave her behind. He visited her every day to check on her recovery. One day, as Adepa was starting to get better, Armstrong sat beside her bed and introduced himself. "Hello, I'm Armstrong. I've been visiting you daily. How are you feeling?" he asked kindly. "I'm feeling better, thank you," Adepa replied weakly. "Why hasn't your family visited you?" Armstrong asked, concerned. Adepa's eyes filled with tears. "I have no family in Accra. My mother is in the village. I sleep on the street and sell water and drinks to survive." Armstrong nodded thoughtfully. "Why are you selling on the street?" "I want to go to university. I'm saving for it," Adepa explained, a hint of determination in her voice. Touched by her story, Armstrong decided to help. He ensured that Adepa received special treatment in the hospital, where 4 to 5 nurses attended to her daily, treating her like a queen. When she recovered, Armstrong made a proposition. Adepa, with your current condition, it's not safe for you to return to selling on the streets. Would you consider taking care of my old mother at our home instead? Adepa thought about it and realized Armstrong was right. She accepted the offer and moved to Armstrong's home. There, she met his mother, an elderly lady who had just returned from Sweden to spend some holidays in Ghana. "Hello, dear," Armstrong's mother greeted warmly. "Thank you for coming to help me. I just need some assistance around the house." Adepa felt a wave of relief and gratitude wash over her. For the first time in a long while, she felt hope and the possibility of a new beginning. Adepa was a respectful lady in the house, always beginning her sentences with "please." She was appreciative, calm, and obedient. Every morning she would wake up, clean the house, and wipe the TV and other equipment daily. Armstrong's mother, Mommy Grace, would often watch her in amazement, thinking, "Whose daughter is this? Where did she come from? How was she brought up to be so respectful and hard-working? This is what we call a wife material." 2 months later, Mommy Grace decided to know more about Adepa. One afternoon, she sat Adepa down and gently asked, "Adepa, tell me more about yourself." Adepa hesitated but then said, "I was born alone to my parents. I lost my father, so I came to Accra to work and save some money to continue my education." Touched by her story, Mommy Grace asked, "Are you in a relationship?" Adepa looked down and replied sadly, "No, please, Ma Grace." Mommy Grace was surprised. "How can a beautiful lady like you not be in a relationship?" Adepa shook her head. "Oh no, please. I'm a virgin and single." Mommy Grace's eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you sure you are a virgin? It's not common in Ghana to see a virgin like this at your age." Adepa smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. "Yes, Ma Grace, I am." The more she talked about her past, the more it hurt. So Adepa chose not to mention her previous relationship. She had erased that painful memory from her mind. Mommy Grace respected her silence and didn't press further. They both smiled, and Adepa continued her work, feeling a bit lighter. Mommy Grace watched her with admiration and gratitude, feeling blessed to have such a wonderful person in her home. The bond between them grew stronger, filled with mutual respect and affection. The truth is, Armstrong was born in Ghana, but was sent to Sweden at a very young age by his parents. Armstrong became a medical doctor, following in his father's footsteps. His father, who owned a large private hospital in Ghana, passed away, prompting Armstrong's mother to bring him back to manage the hospital, which now belonged to him. His mother, Mommy Grace, had always dreamed of seeing him marry a Ghanaian woman. She noticed that Adepa possessed all the qualities of a good wife, but knew she couldn't force Armstrong to marry her. She could only suggest. One evening, Mommy Grace called Armstrong for a heartfelt conversation. "Armstrong, I want to talk to you about Adepa. She's a wonderful girl with the qualities of a good wife. Have you thought about getting to know her better?" Armstrong sighed. "Ma, you know how hard it is for me to approach a woman. Despite our wealth, I fear that women might only be interested in me because of it." Mommy Grace nodded, understanding his fears. "I know, my son, but Adepa is different. She was given the best care at our hospital because I saw something special in her. She's a virgin and a genuinely good person. I think you should give her a chance." Armstrong's face lit up with a mix of hope and anxiety. "Ma, you know how my heart races whenever I see her. The day I visited her in the hospital, my heart felt like it was beating out of my chest. It was as if joy filled me the moment I saw her. That's why I brought her here. Sometimes I watch her secretly just to admire her, but I'm afraid to approach her. Please, Mummy, help me. I love her, and she is my first love. Mommy Grace smiled warmly. Don't worry, my son. I'll talk to her. Later that evening, Mommy Grace gently approached Adepa. Adepa, can we talk for a moment? Yes, Mommy, Adepa replied, curious. Mommy Grace took her hand and said, Armstrong has deep feelings for you. He admires your strength, kindness, and character. He wants to get to know you better, but is shy to approach you. What do you think? Adepa was afraid due to her previous experience and told Mommy Grace she would think about it. Mommy Grace was surprised. She thought Adepa would agree instantly because of their background. Expecting a quick reply, she was taken aback when more than 2 weeks passed without an answer. This made Mommy Grace respect Adepa even more for not rushing into a decision. Armstrong grew impatient and pressured his mother. Ma, why hasn't she responded yet? He asked anxiously. Armstrong, give her some time. She's a virgin, and so are you. This is a big decision for her. Mommy Grace replied gently. You need to muster the courage and talk to her yourself. One day, Armstrong returned from work and found Adepa and his mother sitting in the hall. Gathering his courage, he approached Adepa. With tears in his eyes and holding a flower, he knelt in front of her. Adepa, he began, his voice trembling. My heart is hurt and in pain. Your love and care can heal these wounds. I love you so much, and this is the first time I've ever proposed to a woman. My heart beats faster every time I see you. I love you deeply. Adepa started crying and ran back to her room. After a moment, she returned to the hall, walked up to Armstrong, and hugged him tightly in front of Mommy Grace. Armstrong, I love you too, she whispered. 2 months later, when Mommy Grace was preparing to return to Sweden, she took Adepa with her to study medicine. She wanted Adepa to help Armstrong manage the hospital in the future. Adepa's life transformed completely. She went from being a nobody to becoming somebody significant. Sometimes the enemies who think they are destroying your destiny are actually paving the way for your success. Abigail and Dickson had visited Europe once and were planning their next trip. One day, Abigail saw Adepa's status on WhatsApp and was shocked to see her in a foreign country. Curious and jealous, she messaged Adepa. Where are you? Adepa replied, I am studying medicine in Sweden. My regards to your mother and Dickson. 6 months later, on Adepa's birthday, Armstrong and Adepa's mother surprised her with a visit to Sweden. The reunion was filled with joy, sadness, tears, and happiness beyond words. Adepa kept updating her status with selfies of her and her mother in Sweden. Abigail and her mother saw everything, feeling a mix of pain and regret. Meanwhile, 2 months ago, Dickson had a dispute with his business partners in Ghana over a sum of money. One partner, angered by Dickson's refusal to pay, had ominously told him, "We shall see." As Abigail and Dickson prepared for their second trip to the USA, they were stopped at Kotoka Airport by NACOC officers. They had received a tip-off that Abigail and Dickson were smuggling cocaine. During the search, cocaine was found in Abigail's belongings. She was stunned, having no knowledge of the drugs. "I don't know anything about this," Abigail cried, looking at Dickson for support. Dickson, equally shocked, said, "I have no idea how that got there." Both were arrested, and further investigation led to a search of Dickson's house, where kilos of cocaine were found. The discovery sealed their fate. At the trial, Dickson pleaded guilty to dealing in cocaine. Abigail's mother spent all her money on lawyers, desperately trying to save her daughter, but to no avail. Abigail was sentenced to 10 years in prison, while Dickson received 15 years. The courtroom was filled with tension as the sentences were handed down. Abigail's mother wept openly, realizing the consequences of their actions and the bitter irony of their downfall. Abigail's mother nearly died of heartbreak. Her only daughter was jailed, and her source of happiness was gone. Her health declined rapidly, and she cried every day, blaming herself for Abigail's fate. Ever since Adepa left, her husband, Mr. Opoku, had been unhappy, knowing that Auntie Ama hadn't treated Adepa well. One day, Mr. Opoku visited Abigail in prison. With tears in her eyes, Abigail said, "Father, please apologize to Adepa for me. It's all our fault." Mr. Opoku was stunned. "What happened, Abigail?" She explained everything, and Mr. Opoku's heart ached. When he returned home, he confronted his wife. She confirmed the truth, and Mr. Opoku became furious. In his anger, he sent Auntie Ama, who was now seriously ill, back to her family in the village. In a twist of fate, the best house in the village was the one Adepa's husband had built for her mother. But since Adepa's mother was in Sweden, her family occupied the entire house, leaving no space for Auntie Ama. She was forced to stay in the old family house where she had lived as a child, because she had never helped any family members while she enjoyed life in Accra. They didn't visit her. She had lost everything and spent her remaining money on her health. Back in Sweden, Adepa received the news with a mix of emotions. She couldn't help but feel a sense of justice, but she also felt sadness for what could have been. Her journey had taken a turn for the better, and she was determined to make the most of the opportunities given to her. As she continued her studies, Adepa knew that sometimes the universe has a way of righting wrongs. Her success was a testament to resilience and the unexpected paths life can take. Adepa and Armstrong's lives had flourished. They had 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. Adepa and her mother returned to Ghana but chose to stay in Accra. Adepa managed her husband's hospital, and Sweden became their second home. One afternoon, Armstrong noticed Adepa looking out the window, deep in thought. "What's on your mind, love?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her. Adepa sighed. "I'm just thinking about how much things have changed. I never thought I'd be here, with you, with our children." Armstrong kissed her forehead. "You deserve every bit of happiness, Adepa. Your strength and kindness brought us here." Adepa smiled, tears in her eyes. "I never imagined I'd have a family like this. Thank you for believing in me." Armstrong held her close. "We're a team, always, and no matter what, we'll face everything together." As they stood there, looking out at their beautiful home, Adepa felt a deep sense of gratitude and peace. Despite the hardships and betrayals, her life had transformed into something beautiful. Her past sorrows had led her to a future filled with love, family, and endless possibilities. The pain of the past was slowly healing, replaced by a hopeful future filled with promise. As they stood there, looking out at their beautiful home, Adepa felt a deep sense of gratitude and peace. Despite the hardships and betrayals, her life had transformed into something beautiful. Her past sorrows had led her to a future filled with love, family, and endless possibilities. As we conclude Adepa's story, let it serve as a powerful reminder of the consequences of greed and the inevitable fall of those who succumb to it. Remember, not all that glitters is gold. The seemingly shiny path of greed can lead to a dark and painful downfall, just as it did for Abigail and Dickson. Adepa's journey teaches us that what is meant to be will always find a way. Despite the betrayals and hardships, her strength and kindness led her to a life filled with love and success. Sometimes those you love will betray you, and those you trust will harm you. They may push you into a pit of thorns, hoping it will destroy you. But often that pit is filled with gold and wealth, turning your misfortune into triumph. May the end of Adepa's story be your portion. May your sorrow turn into happiness, and may your enemies regret their actions against you. Their deadly traps should become your stepping stones to success. Comment with Amen if you believe in this transformation. Please share where you are watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Ananse Web of Tales for more encouraging stories. Your support helps us continue to bring you inspiring and uplifting content. Thank you for being a part of our storytelling journey. See you soon.